Hey there, it's Michael with BlackBeltProject.com. In the next section here, we're going to talk about your calendar setup for a Black Belt GTD system setup. I recommend that right off the bat that you work with a digital calendar. And if you're a paper advocate and you want to go paper, I probably will never convince you, but the benefits of going digital with your calendar, I think, far outweigh your benefits of a paper calendar. And where you're going to see the most productive change in your calendar are for your recurring events. Recurring events in a calendar are, in my opinion, where you can get a huge benefit of using your calendar properly. If you know on the first of every month that your mortgage is due, you might always remember that just instinctively, but if you've got thousands of things to remember, and if the goal of GTD is to get everything off your mind, if you get that item on your calendar, along with the phone number for the mortgage company, along with the payment amount, and maybe even the account number if your calendar is private, all that information at your fingertips whenever you have a question about your mortgage is handy. And because it's always carried over to the next month, you always have it handy, and then you never forget. So anything that comes through your system that has to be remembered on a different date, it makes sense to put that on your calendar. And rather than re-record that every single month on a paper calendar, the fact that it's digital and it always remembers for you is one less thing you got to remember to carry over. So I strongly recommend that you go digital. Now, there are really a handful of choices as far as going digital. If you're an Outlook user, Outlook is fantastic. Yahoo Calendar, which is personally what I use, and then Google and some other tools out there that you can use. But if you go digital, and particularly if you go like with a Yahoo Calendar or with a Google Calendar, the neat thing about those calendars are they can send you email reminders and of any event you've got to remember. Now this leads into the Tickler File, and I know in Getting Things Done, David Allen's book, he recommends setting up a Tickler File, and I would recommend that too if you have a lot of paper items that need to be remembered on a certain day. But if not, you've put a lot more bulk in your system, and I think that if you streamline that down to, if you have something that you got to remember on a certain day 2 months from now, that you put that on your calendar electronically with a reminder to remind you when you need to remember it, and then stick that, if there's a physical piece of paper that goes along with that, if you stick that into your waiting for folder, I think that is a great substitute for carrying a Tickler File around with you, particularly because I travel a lot. I went to that system. Now, if you got plenty of space where you have a lot of items that need to be remembered on certain days, and they're all physical items that need to be seen on those days, then you're probably going to opt for a hard Tickler File. But personally, I found that in my particular case, it's hard to remember to check that Tickler File, but I check my email every day, probably more often than I should. So I'm going to get that reminder, and I have a lot of faith that I'm going to get it, so I've kind of eliminated the Tickler File. So if you're not digital, go digital with your calendar. There's a lot of overhead there you can get rid of, and the added benefit of that is that if you're a paper person, you can print out your calendar and you can still have a paper version of your calendar, and you can still write on it, you can still update it electronically. The other nice thing about having a digital calendar is that you can sync it to a BlackBerry, for example. So I'll take my Yahoo Calendar and sync it to BlackBerry, and then instead of carrying my calendar around with me everywhere, which was kind of bulky because I had it in a binder when I first started, I have it in my BlackBerry, and now I carry my BlackBerry everywhere with me, and it's got my calendar right there. If you're a paper person though and you don't want to do it that way, remember that you can still use a digital calendar and you can print it out, and I know I did that for a long time. So anyway, that's my segment on Black Belt Calendar. There's some certain things you can do to improve your calendar as far as just a basic setup. That's the way I would go. Anyway, zip over to my website, BlackBeltProject.com, and I'll see you in the next episode.